Anger is one of the top passion killers in a relationship. So, how is it possible that anger could be a key to deeper intimacy in your relationship? That's super counterintuitive, isn't it? Doesn't make sense right out of the gate. But here's why. So I think anger is one of the most misunderstood emotions in our culture. It is often maligned and repressed and shamed, and it's like, oh, if you express anger, you have anger issues, and you need to go fix that, and you need to correct something about yourself. And of course, with any emotion, there are healthy and unhealthy expressions of it, and we'll get into that, of course. But anger in and of itself is neither a positive nor a negative emotion. Personally, I think it's an emotion that speaks for or in place of other emotions. It comes out and it basically says, hey, pay attention to me. I'm a big, loud, and powerful emotion, and I've got stuff to tell you and stuff to show you, and you're not going to know those things unless you pay attention to me, anger. And so when anger is coming forth, the thing to remember, which is very hard to remember in the moment, but put it on a post-it note if you have to. If I'm feeling anger, it means that there are other things I'm feeling underneath that anger that need attention. The only way to get to those things is to dig for them, metaphorically. Examine within yourself. Take a dive into your psyche. Ask yourself some probing questions. And so think of anger as a flag, like stuck in the ground that says, dig here. And it's saying, hey, the solutions to your problem, the explanations to your feelings, and maybe solutions to your problems are all found deeper here, but you got to dig here first. So when there's anger coming up within you or within your partner, it's like, hey, time to start digging. What's going on here underneath that? And it's important to hold space for the anger instead of shut it down, right? Because when you're feeling anger, the last thing you want is for someone to be like, hey, stop being angry. Like, turn that shit off. That's not, I don't like seeing that. Your anger makes me uncomfortable. And therefore, you need to tone it down. You need to, express it differently. And if anger is harming, of course, express it differently. But if you're being angry and expressing anger, sure, it can be very passionate. It can be very confronting. It can be very messy because we're speaking from our amygdala. Our, lizard brains are out being like, oh, I'm mad and I don't have any evolved things to say about that because it's a very unevolved place. Anger is like a base emotion, right? So holding space for that anger allows it space to breathe and to come out and say, hey, here's what I need to talk about. Here's what we need to address. Here's what we need to look at. Here's a need that's not being met. But giving it that container, saying, it's all right that you're mad, or it's all right that I'm mad. And we're going to look at this in a space where it's all right to express that anger as long as there's a step after it. Okay, what's next? You can express all the anger, but are you digging? We got to dig too. There's got to be like a story arc to this. You express the anger, you do some digging, you figure some things out, you find some solutions, and then you resolve. The resolution is that coming together, which I'll totally go over in another video because there are so many important tools there that were never taught. But when you're looking at anger, it's that signal that we need to remember. Dig here, find out what's going on because it's very important. It's stirring up a lot of intense emotions. It's truly at the root of many other feelings. I would say that in order to examine those things, you need to turn on the front part of your brain to check that out and use your emotional intelligence, a little bit of your analytical mind, which is difficult because your brainstem is activated, right? Being very reactive, very emotional, and the front of your brain needs to come in. The more evolved part needs to say okay, anger, I got you. You can express yourself. We're going to do some calming techniques. And then I'm going to come online and speak about the explanation. So having that self-awareness can help you identify why you're angry and come up with the explanation and words and the true story of what's happening inside you. In fact, a good tip for that is to use the phrase, I'm experiencing the story that, or I have a narrative that, and then speak your mind and say this might be incorrect, this might come across messy, but I'm just going to get out what I'm experiencing in my mind in the form of a story. And I'm open to being proven wrong. I'm open to changing that story. And that is very important for your partner to hear because they need to know that you don't have this narrative that they're totally the bad guy, right? So letting them know that I'm having a story and here's my experience that has created evidence to support my conclusions of this story, but it doesn't mean it's the be all end all written in stone. My experience is the only experience in the world, because of course it's not. Your partner has their own experience too. So anger is going to tell you that there's something wrong, but it's not going to tell you what's wrong, and it's not going to tell you how to fix it. So that's where your emotional intelligence, your rational brain can come in and try to address those things. But they won't be able to address those things unless anger came up first to tell you that something was wrong. It's oftentimes that a need is not being met. Maybe a need for inclusion, a need for allowance for your feelings, like space to be held, a need to be heard, a need to have attention, a need to feel important, a need to feel loved and cared for, or something like that. All kinds of things. Or a need for a quiet night's sleep and your partner's blasting the music. We all have these needs that are totally subjective, but they're valid for each one of us, right? And so the anger is like, grr, a need's not being met. And you're like, which one? So that's up to you to figure out and express. So there's 3 main types of anger. And whenever I work with clients, I first ask them, how is anger showing up in your relationship? What does it look like in practice? What is the role it plays between the two of you? Is one person more allowed to be the angry one or seen as the anger person and the other one is not? Is it because maybe they're having some suppressed anger? Is anger very destructive and makes your connection worse and damages it? Or can anger be productive? Do you learn things through the experience of sharing and experiencing anger with your partner? So those are all super important. The 3 main types, which you typically fall into one of these 3 categories, but sometimes it depends on the thing you're angry about. One is passive anger, which is when you internalize the experience of anger. You keep it quiet, you keep it bottled up inside. Sometimes people turn it on themselves and direct it at themselves with very negative self-talk, self-blame, things that when they're angry at somebody else, they'll turn the story and make themselves angry about themselves, because being angry at the other person is unacceptable, or they're incapable of seeing someone in that way for whatever reason. This can turn into resentment because you bottle it up and you don't express that anger. Second type of anger is aggressive anger, where it is a very outward expressed anger. It's outbursts, it's maybe yelling, raising your voice, becoming very animated and expressive and having a lot to say. And sometimes this may look like a lot of clarity, but it's often too much, and it can be a very destructive force to another person. It may not be directly self-destructive, but it's outwardly destructive. And that's where you get things like blame and, like damaging things to the connection, where you're like directing your anger at somebody else. And it's very arresting. And then the third type is passive-aggressive anger, which of course we've all heard of. And that is when you're feeling or experiencing one thing, but you express or say or do something that indicates another thing that is in conflict with the first thing. They're opposites or just different in some way. So the classic example is saying, I'm fine, I'm not angry, nope, everything's fine. And of course it's not. You're actually very upset inside. So you're saying one thing, but you're actually feeling another thing. And this is a great way to give mixed signals to your partner and not bring them in collaboratively to solve the problem with you, which is the solution, which is the way out. So it's another way that you are somewhat being aggressive, right? Like you are shooting daggers energetically, but you are being passive and bottling it up because you're not actually talking about the anger. You're not fully expressing it and letting it out into a safe container. Also, so all of these are destructive methods of anger. To see anger in a healthy way is to look at it like a path. If you follow this path with compassion, patience, and genuine curiosity, these are the important keys of approach to your partner to let them feel seen and accepted and validated in what they're feeling at the moment. Validating someone, of course, doesn't mean you agree with everything they say, doesn't mean you roll over and do whatever they tell you to do. It just means saying, I understand that you're angry, and it's okay you're feeling what you're feeling. In fact, tell me more about that. Where is that coming from? What's coming up? What does it feel like for you? Where do you want to go with this? And so asking those probing questions and going on that journey of anger with your partner is going to help them feel like, oh, my anger is allowed right now. My anger is important because it's bringing up important things. And when you get curious about your partner, Why are you feeling angry? What can I do? Where did it come from? What does it mean to you? What values or beliefs are being brought up or being violated right now that is making you angry? It's often a very like root foundational thing that pisses someone off. And so when you can get curious, then the anger becomes the path to a solution because you are embarking on it together and you're saying, there is space for that, and it's important for us to know and understand that anger, and then go where it takes us, hopefully to a solution, a better place of understanding each other, getting to know each other better. I like to say that anger is a vehicle for change if you let it. Sometimes it feels like a wall that you're just hitting up against, but something is wrong about your approach if that's how it feels. If anger feels like, okay, if we follow this and we investigate what's up with this, we will come to something new. We will have transformed and transmuted it into a way that benefits our connection and our relationship. And so, sure, anger in the moment is a passion killer, absolutely. But if you approach it in a more conscious and intentional way, you have so much to learn about your partner and about yourself in the process. And it requires calming down first, of course. And I will go over in another video the techniques on how to chill out during an argument in order to turn it into something productive instead of destructive, where people are just flinging insults and arrows and, toxic argument techniques at each other. That's not productive. So anger can be that vehicle for change, especially when you're feeling that anger and you choose to do something different. If you choose to do something that is not a maladaptive, strategy that may be a behavior pattern that you learned in childhood or previous relationships that's toxic and unproductive, and feel like, I want to do something different this time. I'm going to try something different. I can still be angry, but this is an opportunity for me to self-advocate, an opportunity for me to show up for myself and my needs and my beliefs and my values and whatever is not in alignment with those things. And so this is my chance to stand up for myself, to speak my truth, to be honest, to rock the boat, like I talk about all the time. And it's scary, but seeing your anger as a companion, like a little sidekick with you, where you're like, all right, we got to address some shit. Come with me, anger. You know what I mean? Don't work against me. Don't block me from expressing what I need to express, but rather let's go together and be my vehicle. So it's a chance to self-advocate. And when you see your partner as attempting to do that through their anger, you can totally transform the way you see them and their anger and what they're angry about. And it's an opportunity for you then to receive and learn and walk with them on the path towards resolution. So healthy expression of anger comes in many different forms. There's a ton of different tools, and the ones that I work with clients around are nonviolent communication, which is its own topic. In fact, podcast coming soon on that, but also like calming techniques like I was talking about, because it's your nervous system that is extremely activated in the moment when you are angry. You feel wronged. You feel betrayed. You feel pissed off or deliberately hurt in some way. There's some pain at the root of that anger. And you must be able to express it in order to get past it. Because if you just shut down the feeling and only focus on solutions in this hyper-rational, robotic way, that can be really difficult for your partner to receive, especially if the anger involves them in the story in some way. So being able to calm yourself while also expressing anger. So it's a dance, right? Between like a fire hydrant of expression of anger, too much, destructive, not helpful, or completely bottling it up and holding really tightly to it in a way that like corrodes you from the inside. So the in-between place is allowing space for the anger, expressing it in a way that feels authentic to you, that you would not be embarrassed if it was recorded on film. That's a good indicator. In fact, in previous relationships, when I've had arguments with a partner, we started audio recording it. That really helps hold you accountable for what you say and how you say it. So expressing that anger, it can be very intense and, animated and passionate, but it can be those things without being destructive. And then when you get to the solution-oriented phase, that's when you can bring in nonviolent communication and talk about the unmet needs that are underneath these feelings that are coming up, and make requests to other people, your partner, in order to help get those needs met and therefore eliminate the anger in the future. So I'm very curious. Tell me how anger shows up in your relationship, how you deal with it, how you are dealing with it in maladaptive ways, perhaps, and any techniques that have worked for you, because we're all in this together. Until next time.